Welcome back to Two Minds Infinite Stories podcast. Today,
Yeah.
we're diving into something that's been all over the news lately.
Yeah.
It's the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of you have been asking about this one, so we went through all the coverage, all the reactions, and let me tell you, there's some really interesting things here.
I bet.
This is so much more than just
Yeah.
who won or lost in the ring.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how much attention this whole thing got, even before the fight even happened.
Oh, yeah.
It's a YouTuber turned boxer going up against a legend like Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
It was like two completely different worlds colliding.
Our inboxes were blowing up. People from all over were sending us messages about this fight. I mean, you got Jake Paul, the king of online spectacle, stepping into the ring with Iron Mike.
And everybody had these different expectations going in, right?
Yeah,
Some people thought it was just going to be a big cash grab. Others are hoping to see a little bit of that old Tyson magic. But the fight itself, well, let's just say it left a lot of people scratching their heads.
Okay, so let's actually break down what happened in the ring.
All right, so Tyson, he's got that explosiveness, but you could see his age was a factor.
Yeah.
His footwork wasn't what it used to be. He couldn't really keep up that same intensity. And then Paul surprised me. He seemed almost too respectful of Tyson. Like he was hesitant to really go after him.
Yeah, you can see that in the scorecards, too. It was 80-72, 79-73, 79-73.
Wow.
All for Jake Paul. Clear win for him. But then get this. Tyson drops this bombshell after the fight.
What?
He starts talking about a potential match with Logan Paul,
Oh, wow.
Jake's brother. Do you think he was serious?
It's hard to say. Maybe he's looking for another challenge. Maybe he just wants to stay in the spotlight. I don't know. But if he's really considering Logan Paul, what does that tell us about how a fight between them might go?
And,
Yeah.
the fans and the commentators, their reactions were pretty intense.
Oh, I bet.
A lot of disappointment. Some people even said they felt ashamed. One quote that really stuck with me said this: Jake Paul should be embarrassed. Netflix should be embarrassed. And Mike may have tarnished his legacy a little bit more.
Wow, that's harsh. Yeah. But it's understandable. There were those technical problems with the Netflix streaming.
Yeah.
The fight itself wasn't exactly a thriller. And there's that whole feeling that it was more about the money than the sport.
It makes you wonder, what do people really value these days, right?
Right?
Would you have paid to watch this fight? What would have made it worth the money for you?
That's a good question. This whole thing could be part of a bigger trend, not just in boxing, but in entertainment in general. We're seeing this rise of celebrity boxing, and the lines between sport and spectacle, they're getting blurrier and blurrier.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mayweather versus McGregor. But at least in that fight, McGregor landed a few good punches early on. This just felt different. Makes you wonder, where's the line? At what point does all the spectacle actually start to hurt the sport?
That's the question, isn't it? We're seeing seasoned pros going up against, relative newcomers. And sure, those newcomers might have a ton of followers online. But is that enough?
And speaking of legacies,
Yeah.
let's talk about Mike Tyson. He's a legend, no doubt. But this loss goes on his professional record.
That's right.
He's at 50 wins and 7 losses now.
And those losses include some really big names. Buster Douglas, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, Danny Williams, Kevin McBride, and now Jake Paul.
So does this hurt his reputation as an icon? Or is it just like this weird little side note in a really long and complicated career?
I mean, Tyson's legacy is already this wild mix of victories and controversy and personal struggles, you know? Some people might see this fight as like a sad ending. Others might just see it as a bizarre spectacle.
And then you've got Jake Paul, who's already calling out Canelo Alvarez.
Wow.
Arguably the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world right now. Is that realistic?
Well, his performance against Tyson, it was technically solid, but it didn't exactly scream future world champion. Makes you wonder what his real goals are.
Right. There's this gap between all the trash talk and what we actually saw in the ring.
Yeah.
Is he serious about being a top-tier fighter? Or is this just a stepping stone to something else? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this fight has given us a lot to think about.
You can say that again. This whole thing, the fight, the reactions, the trends, it all makes you think.
Absolutely. And speaking of thinking, we've got a lot more to discuss. We'll be back in just a moment with more on the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson saga. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what we value in entertainment.
I know what you mean. Like seeing these really strange matchups It's definitely grabbing people's attention, and I think technology plays a huge role in that
Oh,
too.
absolutely. Platforms like Netflix, they're always looking for content that's going to go viral. And these celebrity face-offs, they generate a ton of buzz online, which means more subscribers for them.
It's like this cycle. The more attention these events get, the more money these platforms are willing to put into them, and then they become even more common.
And that's what worries a lot of people, especially the ones who are really into boxing. They're afraid that these spectacle fights are taking away from the really talented boxers, the ones who are working their way up the ranks the traditional way.
You could really see that frustration in the comments from the viewers. A lot of them felt like the Paul Tyson fight was just disrespectful to the sport. It was so far from the days when boxing was all about skill and strategy and real competition.
Yeah, one comment that really stood out to me said this: the Taylor Serrano fight before Paul Tyson was so much better. It was like watching a completely different sport. And I think that perfectly sums up how a lot of boxing fans are feeling.
So where do we go from here? Is boxing just going to become all about celebrity and online popularity instead of athletic talent?
It's hard to say for sure, but one thing's for certain: those lines between sport and entertainment, they're getting blurrier and blurrier.
It's like we're constantly being asked to choose
Yeah.
between something real and something flashy, between the pure competition and the excitement of a viral moment.
And those choices, they have real consequences, not just for the fighters, but for the future of the sports we care about.
Like Mike Tyson, for example. This fight definitely had an impact on his legacy.
Whether you see it as a disappointing end to his career or just a strange chapter, there's no denying it added another layer to his already complex story.
And for Jake Paul, this win will probably make him even more ambitious. But it also makes you wonder, how serious is he really about boxing? Is he in it for the long run? Or is he just riding this wave of hype?
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure: this fight has given us all a lot to think about, not just as boxing fans, but as people who consume entertainment in a world that's obsessed with spectacle.
That's a good point. It's not just about boxing. This is happening across all kinds of entertainment.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be digging into after the break. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about the fight itself, the reactions, and how this whole thing fits into like these bigger trends we're seeing.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for our listeners?
That's the real question, isn't it? We can sit here and analyze all day long, but in the end, it's up to each person to decide how they feel about these kinds of events.
Right, like what matters more to you? When you're choosing what to watch, are you looking for like amazing athleticism? Or are you more interested in seeing celebrities do something unexpected? Does it bother you when the lines between sport and entertainment get blurry? Or is that just how things are changing?
It's definitely something to think about. There are no easy answers here. But I think it's important to be aware of what's happening in the world of entertainment and how it might be affecting our values.
Yeah, because in the end, the future of boxing, maybe even entertainment as a whole, it depends on what we choose to support, what we watch, who we cheer for, the events we pay attention to. All of that shapes what we'll see in the years to come.
Absolutely. So next time you see a headline about a celebrity boxing match or a YouTuber taking on a pro athlete, just take a second, stop and think. What am I really watching here? What message am I sending by supporting this?
It's a good point. In a world where everyone is fighting for your attention, it's more important than ever to be a mindful viewer and make choices that actually match your beliefs.
We're bombarded with so much content these days. It's easy to just passively consume it. But if we actually take a moment to think critically about what we're watching, we can actually shape the kind of entertainment landscape we want to see.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We hope this episode has given you something to think about.
Always remember, there's so much out there to explore and learn. Keep asking those questions and stay curious.
That brings us to the end of another episode of Two Minds Infinite Stories podcast. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, for more deep dives and behind-the-scenes content. We'll also be launching on Spotify soon, so keep an ear out for that. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring those infinite stories.